Hi, everybody. My name is Susanna Doyle, and I am the Alumni Relations Manager at Trinity Development and Alumni. You are all very welcome to Inspiring Ideas at Trinity this evening. I am delighted to welcome the CIO of Zoom, who is also an alumnus of Trinity, Harry Moseley, as well as Dr. Brendan Tangney, who is Trinity's Department of Computer Science and Statistics, who will be speaking together about how Zoom, which is currently one of the most used video conferencing platforms in the world, is reshaping how we are now doing everything from teaching to connecting socially to organizing workplace meetings and more. Before we get started, if you are listening in on Zoom tonight and watching on Zoom, you can enter the full screen mode or exit on the top right of your screen. If you would like to adjust your audio settings, you can do that on the bottom left of your screen. If you need to leave the meeting, you can do that on the bottom right of your screen. And if you'd like to ask us any questions, please do so by clicking on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. The speakers will be taking questions from you this evening. So we would really encourage you to ask as many questions as you like. If you are watching tonight on Facebook Live, again, you can mute and unmute your video. And if you'd like to ask any questions, again, you can use the comment section on Facebook to put your questions. And again, our speakers will try and answer as many of them as they can. We will also be recording tonight. So if for whatever reason you need to leave early or you're having technical problems, we will be sending out the recording automatically if you're listening in on Zoom. And if you're watching on Facebook, you will be able to find the recording in the next day or so on our YouTube platform. Before we get going, we will just have about 35 minutes of conversation between Harry and Brendan, after which they are going to open up to Q&A from all of you. And we are planning on finishing by about 8:30 this evening. So now I wanted to introduce Dr. Brendan Tangney, who is a professor in computer science and statistics and a fellow of Trinity College Dublin. His research focuses on the overlapping areas of technology and learning, educational reform, and equality of access. He is co-director of Trinity's Center for Research in IT and Education, which is a joint initiative between the School of Education and the School of Computer Science and Statistics, and Trinity Access 21, which is a joint initiative between the Center and the Trinity Access programs. He has held visiting positions in the universities of Sydney and Kyoto. He is a member of the editorial board of Computers and Education and the Journal for STEM Education Research. He chairs the Ministerial Advisory Board on the implementation of the digital strategy in schools. So now I will stop sharing my screen and hand this over to Brendan.
So good evening, everybody, and good evening, Harry. So, so we don't have Harry's video, do we? So there you are. Yeah. Hiya, Harry. All right. Good evening,
Brendan, how are
and
you?
welcome to everybody out there in Zoom land. So what I would like to explore with Harry this evening are sort of three broad areas. So one is a bit about Harry himself and how he got to be where he is and what he's doing. The second is this question of scale. How did Zoom go from what it was to this global phenomenon? And then the third thing I'd like to explore is sort of the new normal and societal implications of all of this. So that's the things that I'd like to explore with Harry. We'll take questions. I'll keep an eye on the questions as they're coming in, and we'll keep it all as interactive and informal as we can. So that's the plan for the evening. So I'm not going to do an embarrassing thing and read out Harry's bio and tell you all about him, because instead I'm going to get him to do it. So Harry, right? Did you ever imagine? So you might tell us the significance of these things in the photographs, and how did you get from there to here?
Well, yes, I can, and God only knows. But the rough story goes something like the following. Well, first of all, Brendan, great to be on with you this afternoon, this evening. And thank you and your colleagues at Trinity for hosting this terrific series. I think it's helping people in all sorts of different ways. So thank you for doing that. So yes, so you've got a few photos up here. Top left is Rathgar National School, which was the beginning of my academic education, and I went from Rathgar to the high school down on Harcourt Street, and then from the high school on Harcourt Street, it moved up to Rathgar, just a little north of Stratford College up there. And then I was very fortunate to get a place at Trinity and studied at Trinity from 1973 to 1977. Spent 4 years in the museum building, which I know you only know too well. It's like, and it still fascinates me today as I reflect on those days of going into the engineering building to learn about engineering and learn about math and computer science, and that dinosaur that used to be in there. I don't know if the dinosaur is still inside the museum building. I was there recently and I tried to get in. I think you were doing some renovations to the building. The big brass knocker that was on the door, it doesn't seem to be there anymore. So, but that was
Catch you in the next time you're over.
That's a plan, and I'll hold you to it. And then I graduated college in '77. I went to work in England for a year, and in the summer, and as you know, it's like my degrees are in engineering, math, computer science, and I always wanted to be an engineer, and I spent a year as an engineer. And then I remember that conversation with my dad one day. He said, "Dad, it's like, you know, this engineering stuff isn't that great, and so I'm going to try my hand at the computer science efforts." And I joined a software company in London in 1978. That was building real-time banking systems back then. And in 1979, moved to New York for 6 months. And that was about 41 years ago. So that's how I came to New York. Spent another couple of years working for that software company in New York. Started my own software company here in 1981, sold it in '84, joined the Union Bank of Switzerland, worked for them for about 14 years. Then I joined Credit Suisse. Just happened to be coincidence moving from one Swiss bank to another Swiss bank. Then I joined the Blackstone Group, the world's largest asset manager in the world. And then went on to spend 5 years at KPMG and retired in December of 2017. 4 days after I retired, Zoom called me and said, you know, looking for a global CIO. And I said, "Hey, I've just retired. You know, I'm really not interested in working anymore. But I do know lots of CIOs that I could introduce you to." And they said, "Well, you know, that's great, but we're really interested in you." And so we had a discussion, and 12 weeks later, then I started working for Zoom. The picture on the right is my father's factory that burned to the ground in, I believe it was June of 1967. And I helped rebuild that. And then the picture at the bottom was our Zoomtopia, which is our annual user conference. And the colleague who joined me on the floor was one of the vice presidents from Walmart, the Fortune #1 and one of our clients.
So that's quite a journey, and that's a long way from Rathgar to where you are today. And we'll come back to the Trinity piece at the end, I think, to wrap everything up. So we've got a mixed audience of people here listening to this. So for the non-techies, what does a chief information officer do?
That's a great question. It's like, you know, sort of, I tried to explain that to sort of family and friends, but you know, what's fantastic about being the CIO in any organization, you know, the CIO is in the epicenter of the company because they see everything. They see marketing, they see finance, they see HR, and they also see product. They see how they serve their clients, how they support their clients, etc., how they build product, how they release product. And they also, the CIO understands the art of the, what I say, the art of the possible. How do you get things done? What can we do? You know, how can we apply automation? What is artificial intelligence? Lots of people sort of have beliefs about all these different things, but the CIO is in that sort of very unique position where they have a full 360 of the company and can really affect every part of an organization.
Okay, so that brings us then to, I think, what a number of people, some of the questions from the people participating are in this space as well, right? How did you handle scale, right? So how did Zoom go from, I think you had 800 people working for the company a couple of years ago, you know, up to a couple of thousand, but you've now gone from this massive reach since COVID hit, right? And you were stuck in the middle of that.
Yeah, so great question. Yeah, so the scale of, when I joined a little over 2 years ago, 800 people to now, and I think 4 offices then, to north of 3,000 people and 18 offices today. That's not, there's difficulties in that sort of scaling, but not really that dramatic. And it was over a 2-year period. So it's kind of like it just sort of grows, right? The real difficult challenge, if you will, was, sort of scaling from 10 million daily participants on our platform in December to over 300 million daily participants on our platform in middle of April. Because, that was 30-fold increase. Many organizations would love to see that sort of increase over 2 years. We saw that increase over 4 months. So I'm not quite sure how to describe it. There's 2 ways that we managed to scale the technology to support this sort of effort. One was the fact that we've always maintained significant capacity over our peak usage. We also, our technology architecture is such that we can borrow capacity from we have 17 data centers around the world. So we can always borrow capacity from another data center in the same geographical region that has low utilization. So for example, early morning Eastern Standard Time, if there's a lot of demand on the East Coast, we can borrow capacity from our Denver data center, or we can borrow capacity from our California data centers. So that's part of our unique technology architecture. And the other ways we've scaled from a technology perspective is by leveraging Amazon and the Oracle Cloud. And we've moved a lot of our free services into the cloud infrastructure, and we've maintained our 17 data centers around the planet to support our paying clients. And but it's been very humbling. I got to tell you, man, it's been super humbling. As I sit here today, we have over 100,000 schools in 25 countries on our platform, where government organizations are running their countries on our platform. You got the British Parliament, in the UK, running on Zoom. Never a 700-year-old organization only ever met in person. And you've got great enterprises in every industry in 226 countries out of 241. It's fascinating.
So the numbers are staggering, and I think, us in the computer science community, we understand exponential growth.
This is not I don't know what this is. This is logarithmic growth.
Right, but this is a case of it in point. So you're dealing with a lot of companies who've made this transition from working, face to face to working online. So a lot of your peers that are out there, how are they all managing? You said to me in an earlier conversation about, all these people who have data centers, from having 10 data centers to having one in every employee's house. So how did all that work out with security and getting people servers? And that must have been quite a roller coaster.
Yeah, so it's so a couple of things. A lot of people, working from home isn't new for a lot of people. What is new for a lot of people is working from home all the time. Or as my wife would say, it's not working from home, it's like living at work, because people are falling out of bed into work and then falling out of work back into bed. And so that's, I think that a lot of people have been struggling with this transition into the work from home model, but a lot of people now have been, here I am, this is week number 11 for me. Hasn't been so bad for me because I've been working from home for 2 years when I haven't been traveling, and we can come back to that in a moment. But, for some people, working from home every day is hard. If you and your spouse are working and your significant other are working at home and you've got 2 little kids running around, they don't understand that mom and dad are, sort of home for work. They think that they're home because they're home. And like, why can't you play with me? Why can't you play a game? Why can't you read a book? I was talking to a colleague recently, you know, him and his wife, and they've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they're, you know, they're both working from home, and the kids want them to play with them all the time. They can't. So it's like, you know, what did he do? He put duct tape down on the ground and said, okay, so this is the perimeter of my work environment. When I'm on this side of the line, I'm at work. I can't be disturbed. When I'm on this side of the line, I'm happy to read a book and play a game with you. And if something urgent comes up, write it on a Post-it note and put it on the other side of the line, and I'll read it. Okay. And, you know, it works. The technology, you know, there's been a slowdown in the supply chain. So people being able to get monitors at home, you know, getting new laptops at home and things like that. The supply chain has seriously hampered that, but I think, you know, by now people have sort of figured it out and worked through it.
All right. So yes, as I said, you were in the midst of this, talking to companies that were going through this transition. Do you have any sort of insights to share with people from how all these companies managed it?
Yeah, so, you know, it's been really interesting. You sort of like you know, Zoom was built for the enterprise. We've always been focused on the global enterprise, you know, sort of robust companies around the world with large IT organizations to sort of train their professionals and their employees about how to use Zoom, how to manage Zoom, how to set up Zoom, etc. And so, you know, over the last 4 months, there's been a huge adoption, not just in that environment, but also in the personal environment, from doing cocktails on Zoom, dinner parties on Zoom, birthdays on Zoom. The Queen had her birthday on Zoom, to, you know, sort of yoga classes and everything else that's happening over Zoom. And, you know, in the enterprise space, we have a professional organization that sort of helps global.
No, actually, Harry, what I was actually trying to get at was, how do other companies manage it? The companies to be your clients, right? You know, how did they all manage it? You know, to go online and to go work from home.
Well, that's what I was getting to. Is like they you know, they deployed platforms and they educated their people and their professionals about how to you know, sort of how to work from home, and gave them the technology then to do this. I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, I suppose the point I'm getting at is that I think the tech sector managed the transition a lot easier than, say, schools did.
Right? Yeah, schools I was talking to somebody earlier today where their school is literally still transitioning to the online classes. So yeah, some people just got dropped in the deep end and didn't have the sort of knowledge and the experience, didn't have the training and the resources. And that's been a bit more challenging, and we're still seeing some people come up that learning curve. But there's been, I mean, the amount of information that's now available to organizations and individuals about how to go online, best practices for securing meetings, etc., is a lot more available today than it was, call it even 3 months ago.
Right. Well, you mentioned the security word there, and I suppose we have to ask you. Zoom has been getting a lot of coverage about security. So, have you cracked it? Is Zoom completely, totally secure, or is anything secure online?
Well, you know, sort of. You know, not answer your question, as I will in a moment, but let me ask you a question. When you go to bed at night, do you lock the door of the house?
Yeah.
Why?
So on the off chance that somebody might try to come in.
Exactly. You don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and find a stranger in your living room. Yeah, and so there's been, you know, sort of the movement from the in-person meetings to the virtual meetings, as you know, unless you were applying the right controls to doing that transition, then you could end up with some, you know, sort of unsavory activities happening in your meetings, and we'll come back to that. Yeah. You know, I spoke to the Chief Information Security Officer at one of our large global accounts recently, and I said to her, how come you didn't call me when all these sort of headlines were running around. And she said, why should I call you? And I said, because the headlines were bad. She said, yeah, the headlines were bad. But then you have to read below the headlines. You have to read the details of what's going on. And when you understand the details of what's going on and you understand that how we deployed Zoom, you realize that this is essentially a non-issue for us. And that's exactly what I told our CEO, and that's exactly what I told our chairman. And so it comes back to sort of how you do the setup. With respect to sort of all the headlines, there were many thousands of them, but the topics were centered around a few themes, which we reacted to, and that's all been publicized. And we've been very open and transparent about that. And on April the 1st, we took our entire technology team, we pivoted them to focus on security and privacy for the next 90 days. And there's been a whole slew of, sort of features that we've recently introduced, including putting the security controls right at the fingertips of the host. For enterprise clients, they can decide which data centers in the world they want to have their meetings hosted. We recently did an acquisition, I think that was last Thursday. All the days are a bit blurred. We did an acquisition last Thursday of a company called Keybase, which are experts in encryption. And we're going to be announcing our end-to-end encryption services, the plan for it on May the 22nd. And, so last comment, Zoom was founded on 4 core principles. It was founded on being secure. It was founded on innovation and ease of use. It was founded on reliability, and it was founded on being a cost-effective solution. We are absolutely known for cost-effective solution. We are absolutely known for reliability. We operate in the 4 nines. And we're absolutely known for innovation at speed and scale and ease of use. And from a security perspective, we've always been at or above our peer set in the industry. And what our commitment is, and if you go to our website and read the executive letter there from Eric and the entire leadership team of Zoom, we are fully committed to being the leader in secure video conferencing, communications, and collaboration. So we are going to set a new standard around that. As we sit here today, Zoom is absolutely secure and absolutely safe, and I have zero hesitancy making that statement.
Okay, very good. There's a number of questions coming in from the people attending around this thing. So let's move on from that then. So you mentioned schools there. So and somebody was asking, how much does the Zoom cost for schools? And of course, the answer is that you're giving it away to schools for free, right? So where did that come from?
Yeah, so that came from, sort of when we saw how China was shutting down early in January with the quarantines, and then schools were shutting down. And then, if I recall correctly, it went from China to Japan, and we saw the same thing happening there. Education is the foundation for everybody in their entire lives. And so if the education machine stops in the primary schools and the secondary schools, then that's going to affect the university. It affects the whole graduation program. It affects the whole employee supply chain. And so we just decided that we have to we have to just give our software to schools for free so that they can continue to educate their boys and girls as best they could under the circumstances. And that was nothing more than that.
Okay, very good.
I think it goes back to the point, though, it's because we could, so we did.
Okay. So I know from the schools that I'm in contact with, that a lot of them found that journey very rocky, right? Which sort of then brings me to for lots of reasons, right?
Yeah, and so well, what happened was sort of there was a lot of disruptions in the schools. Why? Because we as I said before, we were built for the enterprise. We were built for this professional environment, and now we were giving our software away for free to schools. So let's just take the scenario. So what's called the host is also the teacher in the classroom. And so now if you're the host and you're the teacher and the classroom comes together, everybody had the ability to rename themselves. Everybody had the ability to sort of share content. So now in comes little Johnny to the class, and little Johnny says, "Oh, well, this is cool. It's like I can rename myself, so I'm going to become Mickey Mouse." Or, little Susie, sort of says, "Oh, I can share content. Oh, look, I can share photos. I'm going to share the photo of my new puppy." And things of that nature. Or they share their meeting ID with their friends because why can't I have my friend come to the classroom? And suddenly this thing exploded into all the wrong dimensions.
Yeah.
And so now we've changed the default for the EDU sector that the host is in full control of the classroom, can enable or disable people renaming themselves, sharing content, and lock the room. So, and set up the default to be the waiting room so that they can admit the class and not admit sort of the friends.
Yes, and I think the reason, there are many reasons why schools are, found the transition difficult, right? Some of them, as you said, is, the technical expertise and know-how. The other thing we're doing is, schools are appropriating a tool which was designed for one thing and using it for a different thing. And when you appropriate a tool, these issues always happen. But one of the issues is that surfaced is, the COVID pandemic isn't affecting everybody the same, right? So the digital divide, which was always out there, has now been cast in very stark relief. So everybody who's on this call here tonight is on the right side of the digital divide, because we all have the technology and the capability and the expertise and the environment in which to do all this. But that's not true for everyone, right? So, how do you see, as we go forward into, to use this phrase, the new normal, do you see things getting better or worse around the digital divide piece?
Yeah, and I completely agree with you that there, has not been, from a digital perspective, it hasn't been a level playing field for everybody. There's been the haves and the have-nots, and that's very unfortunate. What I do believe that, if there is a silver lining to this pandemic, then I'd like to believe that, and I've seen this with many of our clients, that the digital transformation journey that they've been on has accelerated as a consequence of the pandemic. What they thought was going to take a year, they've done in a month, and things of that nature. And my hope is that as a consequence of this pandemic, that digital divide that we just talked about, the haves and the have-nots, that gets eradicated so much faster than we thought possible. I think that it was going. I think it is going. Like, it has to go faster. It just has to go faster. Right? And that's my hope.
You might be a bit more optimistic than I am, because one of the projects that we launched was we discovered that many of the students doing Leaving Cert in the schools we work with were trying to do it off their mobile phone, right? Doing the dreaded Leaving Cert is hard enough in the best of times. Trying to do
I remember it.
Yeah, we all do. So, trying to do it off your mobile phone is just impossible. So we launched this campaign to source old laptops and refurbish them and give them out to students in disadvantaged schools. And I think we'll have about 1,000 devices delivered to people by the end of this month. And on one hand, that's great. But on the other hand, we shouldn't have had to do it. And on the third hand, that's not going to reach the whole country, right? And that's only the tip of the iceberg. So I suppose that sort of leads me to this thing about, what's society going to look like, post-COVID? And how are we going to set up and engineer society in light of all the online piece? So you're in New York. Somebody was asking, where's Harry based? So Harry's you're in New York somewhere, not sure where, Manhattan or wherever. So I see that your governor, Andrew Cuomo, is talking to Eric Schmidt, ex of Google, and to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, if I understand it correctly, about making New York the smart city of the future going forward. Do you have any insights or comments on all of that?
My wife is also in technology and in education. She's the CIO for the Scarsdale School District where we live, and she's mentioned it to me in passing, but I don't have a lot of exposure to that topic, to be honest.
Yeah, so I mean, there are questions coming in around, when when all this is over, do you think we're going to go back to business as usual, or are we going to go to some sort of hybrid model?
This is the effect of COVID-19 on the planet has changed work forever. This is akin to a 9/11 event, which changed the way we travel forever, changed the way we enter office buildings forever. This is going to change the way we work forever. When I talk to clients around the world, and I talk to commercial real estate owners and things of that nature, they're looking at, you know, sort of when you look at enterprises over the last several years, what have they done? They've increased the density of the human population in the office space, so to make it a more collaborative environment, to make it a more digital environment. This is now being reversed. So if you had 1,000 people on the floor before, they're going to have 300. They're going to be dropping it by 2/3 the population of people in many cases. In many cases, people are quite happy for, you know, for the opportunity to work from home, and as long as the kids are in school. You know, a couple of companies have come out recently. I think Twitter announced recently that their employees are free to work from home forever. Google and Facebook have said their employees are okay to work from home for the rest of this year. So I think you're going to see a lot more of this sort of hybrid model where people are, you know, some people are working in the office, and the majority of the workforce, where they can, work from home. Some jobs, as we know, can't be done, you know, if you're in packaging or you're in manufacturing, etc., those can't be done on a remote basis. But where jobs can be done remotely, I think that you're going to see a lot more. It's also opened eyes, quite honestly, Brendan, to possibilities. You know, in the past, you know, organizations were focused on recruiting in their location. Now they realize they don't need to recruit locally. They can recruit nationally or globally, find the best athlete for the role. And others have realized that, you know, don't need to travel. You know, I was reading articles recently about M&A bankers who suddenly realized they can actually transact M&A, you know, using video and do digital signatures of papers and things of that nature. And it's so much more effective. I read this one article where this banker was talking about how he's never going to fly to London for a one-day meeting anymore from New York. So,
well, arguably that was crazy carry on in the first place.
I'll let you talk to the bankers about that.
Which is nice. So I mean, and a number of the comments coming in here about, you know, the new normal is that there won't be anything normal about it, right? So
look, you know, I mean, you know, after 9/11, getting on a plane changed forever, right? We got used to it. After 9/11, you know, entering a building, security cameras, taking photos, and all this was all different. We got used to it. You know, there's talk about they're going to do temperature checks when you're entering office buildings. You know, we'll get used to it. There's talk about sort of putting templates in the elevators where people stand and how many people can be in an elevator. We'll get used to it. You know, there's talk here, you know, about when they open the restaurants, they're going to do temperature checks when you enter a restaurant, and the waiters are going to have masks on and gloves on. And I don't know if that's very appealing to go for dinner with friends when waiters are going around with masks and gloves. It feels like I'm in the operating theater.
So, okay, so one of the, as it happens, like one of the courses I teach in Trinity is one on technology and society to our first year junior fresh class. And you know, I often talk to them about technology disrupting society and the various things that are going to happen. I suppose so one of the big concerns people have, say, around privacy, right? So do you think, you know, if I put on a sort of a big brother type hat and I wanted to, you know, so if there was less benign forces running Zoom than there is at the present, right? Could the changes that we're ushering in head us into, 1984 scenarios?
I'm
Does
sorry,
that question make sense, does it?
say that again.
Are we setting ourselves up for a 1984 scenario, right? Where the changes that we're allowing and the reliance on digital technology to mediate what we're doing is in some sense giving us a hostage to fortune, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's. I'm a little worried about some of the changes that people are talking about. Full disclosure, there's talk here of sort of wearing some sort of some sort of wristband that sort of tracks who are the people that you met with during the day, where were you during the day, and things of that nature. There's talks of sort of thermo cameras measuring people's temperatures and stuff like this. I mean, I can't, sort of, I'm not, I'm not open to being sort of sharing everything about my personal and professional life in the public domain. On the other hand, my attitude is if the U.S. government wants to read all my emails and listen to all my phone calls for security reasons, go for it. That's my attitude. But when I read and I hear discussions about technologies of this nature, I think it's getting a little spooky. I think it's getting a little too invasive to be getting. So I'm bothered by some of this stuff.
Right. All right. So I mean, back in the day, so you remember life before the web. I mean, you remember life when we were still doing FTP and Gopher and Waze and all those things to ship things around. So back then, like in the 80s and the early 90s, and when the web came along, the discourse was that technology, the internet, was going to be this great liberator. It was going to be beneficial to everybody, and you had the sort of the techno-utopian view of the world. That went sort of pear-shaped and went very sour in recent years, particularly Cambridge Analytica, all of that thing, right? But then you got the Zoom phenomenon, and you've got, as you said, Zoom cocktail parties and, GoFundMe and a whole bunch of things going on. So do you think there's a chance that that bright utopian aspect of the internet is somehow being reconnected with in this time of crisis?
Yeah, I think that. What do I think? I think that sort of. Look, if we didn't have the internet and we didn't have cloud technologies, we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't have cloud. If we didn't have cloud, the living through this crisis would have been orders of magnitude much worse for many hundreds of thousands of people. And when you read about sort of the speed of identifying a vaccine, identifying tests and so on and so forth, I mean it's all going so much faster than if we didn't have these capabilities today. So I'm a buyer. I think that look, I've spent 40 plus years in technology, so it's kind of, to me technology is going to will it solve world hunger? I hope so. I just don't know when it will be. So it sort of goes back to your question before about sort of like the digital divide. I believe that will get cured too. I just don't know how quickly it will get cured. My hope is it gets cured much faster than what it has been. And I think that everything is beginning to move faster. I think this global pandemic has brought about a pivot of people's thinking. And the human race is pretty awesome from the perspective of how it reacts to things like this and innovates at speed and scale. So I'm pretty excited about where things are going.
Okay. So there are a couple of people here saying hello. David Abrahamson, Sherry Prendergast, and a couple of other people that were in college with you are reaching
out. Hi guys,
to
how are you?
More there in a second. I'll name check them. So let me just pick sort of so in deference to the audience out here, I'm not repeating verbatim any of the questions, but I'm trying to capture the theme of some of them, right?
Sure.
So there's a sort of a theme there around, the next iteration of Zoom, or where is Zoom going, and people, 3D, virtual reality, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I can't share too much about our future. There's a couple of things I will share. So, so one is, so for the next, let's see, what date are we at? So 43. So for the next 47 days, we're going to continue to focus on privacy and security. Nothing is going to change on that regard. And then we will get back to doing, innovating on the platform and creating new features like we have in the past. We introduced simultaneous translation late last year. We have, the ability to do auto transcription and a variety of different capabilities like that. We are all about the meeting experience. We are all about making meetings really efficient for the participants who attended. One of the things that we announced as an example in our user conference last October was the ability in a meeting to make notes in the meeting, so that when you leave the meeting with the minutes of the meeting done, where everything was agreed to, and you can actually do the playback. So we'll see more features and capabilities like that. I think that we'll see great partnerships. We just announced one the other day with a company called Docker, which is all about making the meeting experience, preparing for the meeting, the actual in-meeting and the post-meeting experience, the documentation to it, making major improvements around that. We are an investor in that. We'll see a lot more, I believe, functionality around the work from home model, where, sort of how can you easily collaborate in a virtual environment instantaneously, like you would collaborate in an in-office experience. So pretty excited about that, but beyond that, I can't talk.
Okay, fair enough. Right, that's totally understandable. So there's a question here about Zoom and disabled access. So you can, I've never used it, but you can caption.
Yes, we have closed caption for the hearing. There's a wonderful story. It's like when we were rolling out Zoom to one of our clients in the UK recently, one of the employees came up to our trainer in a private and a quiet moment and said, "I just want to thank you and thank Zoom for what you've done for me personally." And so the trainer said, "Okay, thank you for the feedback. What have we done?" So this young man says, "I have worked for this company for 14 years, and I have never been able to fully participate in a meeting because I have a hearing. I have a hearing. What's the word I'm looking for, Brendan?
Hearing disability or hearing impairment.
Thank you. A hearing impairment. Thank you. I have a hearing impairment, and I've never been able to hear my colleagues properly. So I've always been guessing at what they've been saying by trying to lip reading them." He said, "But now with Zoom and the auto transcription and the closed caption for the hearing, I can read what they're saying." He said, "You have changed my life. You have," it's like, I still get, whenever I tell that story, I get a shiver down my spine, because that's just awesome. I mean, that gets me, that's like, those stories make it all worthwhile.
Yeah. So that's when I think technology has the ability to do that. I mean, technology has the ability to make an enormous impact on individual people's lives. So,
and that has a knock-on effect. It's like, it's not just that person. You make an impact on that person who makes an impact on more people, and that is fantastic.
So, I mean, I oscillate between sort of being a techno-optimist and a techno-pessimist, right? So you could go down the whole surveillance capitalism thing, and that would give you the heebie-jeebies. But then we do tend to give, there are all these great stories and all these great things that are happening, right? So, I know in my own family, we phone each other occasionally, but we're now doing Zoom drinks every Saturday evening. Right?
You are?
So I'm more contact with my siblings than I've had in quite a long time.
Yeah, there was a great article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, and I think the headline was something like "Social distancing? You must be joking." And, and the article goes on, I know more about my colleagues than I ever thought I would in my life. I know their spouses, their significant others. I've met their kids. I've met their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts. I've met their dogs, their cats, their snakes, their rabbits. I've been in their kitchens, their living rooms, their dining rooms, their bedrooms, and in some cases, I was even in one of their bathrooms. It's like, yeah.
Too much information sometimes.
Yeah.
So George the Corsi Wheeler, who's a classmate of yours, is saying hello to you.
Hello, George. You have to ping them all. You have to ping them all with my email address. I'd love to get connected, but I guess we have the alumni website. We should get connected through there.
Hand it over to them to do that, right? So here's an interesting one. I'm just picking this one's out of random, right? So, do you think Zoom will affect the design of houses? If you're designing a house now, right? If you're starting a house design, to be built in the summer, this is a totally random question, so.
I don't know. I got two architects. I got one architect, and my daughter is an architect, and my younger son is about to become an architect. If they were here, I'd ping them and ask them. It's a great question, and I don't have a good answer to it. I think if you're designing a house and your plan is to be working from home frequently, then building in a space that is the workspace, where you only, it's like me. I have this office in my home here in Scarsdale. The only thing I do in this office is work. When I leave my office, I don't work. So it's kind of like, that's how I try to manage my time and manage the demarcation of where I work versus don't work. So I think if I was designing a new home and I had plans to work from home frequently, then I would design it with a space that is specifically reserved for working.
Okay, that makes sense. How is Zoom doing in sort of third world countries?
Yeah, we are, as I said before, we're operating in 226 countries and territories out of the 241 or so in the world. So I don't have a list of the 15 that we're not operating in. So I suspect one of them might be the Sahara. I don't know. But we, in a lot of third world countries, we're, sort of seeing, we look at the where people are joining Zoom from, and we see, sort of more and more lights coming on, so to speak, in certain parts of the planet, and we use that to help drive where we need to increase the capacity in our data centers and where we need to build out a data center. So Sao Paulo, Brazil, I know it's not a third world country, but Sao Paulo, Brazil, we didn't have a data center there, but we saw a lot of people joining meetings from Sao Paulo, from Brazil and South America, and that's a long haul back to the US, and for data governance reasons as well as performance reasons, we put a data center down there as well now. So it's you got to have the internet. If you don't have the internet, then it's really hard. I always remember, actually, that just reminds me of a great story. When I was on vacation in India a couple of years ago with my wife and kids and some family friends who live in India, he was taking us for a tour up in the mountains in southern India, and we were traveling through these tiny little villages, if you will, and he stopped the car and showed us that they were laying fiber in these villages. And he said, "Do you know why we're laying fiber?" And I said, "Because you want to have internet connectivity." He said, "That's not the real purpose. These people have no running water, and these people have no electricity, but they have mobile phones that they power using solar panels. And the reason that the government has decided to lay the fiber and provide it for free is so that they can get educated. Because we believe if our people can get educated, then they can perform jobs. And then if they can perform jobs, then they can get running water and they can get electricity. And I thought that was just so unbelievably terrific.
Well, I said, yeah, that's technology can be a great force for change. So, so again, I'm looking at the questions coming in here. So, so Ronald Ferguson tells that he's friendly with Trevor Shearling, who apparently is connected with one of your cousin's sister, right? And Clifford Sullivan was in the same primary and secondary. See a Rathgar National School boy doing so well, right? And there's a couple of more here as well from people who know you personally. So, so bring back to the.
I hope they're saying good things, are they?
Oh yeah, they're saying yeah, and I'm filtering out the ones that aren't. So
okay, good.
So I just want to bring you back sort of to where we started, right? So to bring it back to the Trinity dimension to all this, right? So this is your ID mugshot and your graduation thing. So what, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy your time in Trinity? And I suppose more importantly, how relevant or important was the foundational education that you got, from people like Victor Graham and Professor John Byrne and people like that? How important was that to you in this long career that you've had?
It's quite fascinating to sit here, and I have my ID card sitting here on my desk, so it's a constant reminder of where I come from. That's always been, in our family, we've always been told, remember where you came from. Trinity was awesome. I had a fantastic experience at Trinity College. Spent way too many hours in the museum building and way too many hours in the library. And if you were to ask my parents if they were still alive, or probably my sister, who is, thank God, alive, she would probably say the same thing. I probably spent way too much time in the sports bar as well. So, but that was those days. That's what you did. You went to college. You went to lectures during the day. You went to the library at night, and when the library closed at 10 o'clock, you'd go off to the pub for a pint or two before you sort of called it a day. And it's like I said to the provost many times, it's like Trinity was amazing and was a big part of making me who I am today, to be honest. And I have a lot of fond memories, and humbled to have been a student and a graduate of Trinity College Dublin.
Right. When I was talking to you about this previously, you mentioned Professor John Byrne and talking about the importance of learning the fundamentals, right? Yeah. I suppose the reason I'm raising it is that, our industry is underpinned by nothing if not rapid change, right? And that new technologies come and go, and all other things being equal, 5, 10 years time, 15 years time, Zoom will be old hat and we'll be doing something else, right? But was there anything in your degree that gave you the ability to ride these numerous changes that you've seen?
Yeah, I think, Professor Byrne, and, I remember my first computer science class and learning Samos and, controlling the registers and reading a word and writing a word and moving things left and moving things right. I mean, if I had to do it today, it's like I wouldn't have a dog's chance. But and I remember him taking the chalk and on the blackboard, sort of explaining what a core was and how sort of the core is magnetized. I'm probably going to get it wrong. Magnetized, sort of clockwise for on and anti-clockwise for off, and that this was the fundamental. And whilst we have all this great technology today, and we have all these amazing capabilities today, the fundamentals haven't changed. But then, as my son corrects me, but Dad, now you've got quantum computing, and so that's going to change it. True, and he is right on that fact. But the fundamentals are still the same. I remember, sort of working on relational databases like Sybase and Oracle and DB2. the underlying for that, the data structures were still the same. There were still files at the end of the day, and it was still being stored on magnetic media. And so, and Professor Byrne, I remember him saying this, if you understand the basics, then you can do everything above. But if you come in at the top and you don't understand the foundations, then you haven't got a chance. And that's why he made us. He made us learn the foundations. And so that was a good learning. So thank you, Professor Byrne.
Listen, Harry, you're very good. So I think that probably brings us, on the full journey from Rackar National School to Zoom to solving the digital divide and back to your days in Trinity again. So listen, look, on my own behalf, on behalf of everybody in Trinity who's put this together, thank you very much for being so generous with your time and for doing this. And to all the people out there who've been attending this, I hope I did justice to at least some of your questions. And if not, then you can email Harry directly and ask him yourself, or Zoom him, or maybe Gate Crash or Zoom Crash, one of his parties you can go to. And somebody wants to know, Harry, how long do you think it'll be before Zoom becomes a word in the Oxford English Dictionary?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think Zoom is in the dictionary. It's like I'd like to think, because Zoom was always there, but sort of Zoom in the business, sort of. But now it's become a verb. Now it's become a noun. I'll Zoom with you later. Let's Zoom later this week. So it's.
My bet would be that the next edition will have Zoom and Zooming in there as
an alternative.
As a new word. So I really enjoyed this Zoominar, and I look forward to giving you there's another new word for you. I look forward to giving you that tour of the museum building when you're ever physically back in Dublin again.
Look forward to that. Brendon, thank you, Susanna.
I really appreciate so much your time here this evening. It's been fantastic to have both of you on. I know that there's so many more questions that have been coming in that we just haven't had time for. So hopefully in the future we'll continue and get more answers out to everybody. But thank you so much, both of you, for your time this evening. I also wanted to thank everybody who's been listening in tonight. It's been fantastic to have so many attendees listening in, and thanks to the team who's been behind the scenes helping out. As well, you mentioned earlier, Brendon, about the Tech to Students. If anybody is looking for more information about the Tech to Students program and possibly donating a computer or just finding out more, you can go to the link there at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions about this webinar, any of our upcoming webinars in our Inspiring Ideas series, or if you have any questions for Trinity Development and Alumni, please email us at alumni@tcd.ie. And finally, next week we will have at 1 p.m. on May 20th in our Inspiring Ideas at Trinity series, Ian Robertson, who is the Emeritus Professor of Psychology at TCD, and he will be speaking on self-care in the COVID crisis. So thanks again, Harry and Brendon, for your time, for the conversation. It's been really fantastic. Hopefully, Harry, next time you're in Ireland, we'll have a chance to see you. In the meantime, to everybody, please stay safe. Good night.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.